Okay, so today we're starting again component side effect and styling techniques. So side effect in web apps are very common. It's important to understand what side effects are so that we can handle them properly in components. So side effects in general, it's just like in medication, when you take a medication, something that you don't expect comes. So that's side effect. So just like that in components in React, if you use things that like API call or something that you don't know what the result will be, then that's side effect. So we'll talk about that and show you an example. We'll explain what side effects are in React component. We'll show hooks such as effect, use effect. We will call an API. We'll use an API call to use the side effect to demonstrate that side effect. We'll do that. And give me a second. So we will also, we'll not talk about the cleanup part, but we'll talk about React Strap and kind of show the styling and things like that. Okay, so what is a side effect in JavaScript and in general JavaScript and also in React? So a side effect is anything that affects something outside of the scope of the function being executed. Things like fetching an API, timer, login, and manually manipulating the DOM are all examples of side effect. There are two categories of side effect in React components: those that don't require cleanup and those that require cleanup. So today we'll talk about the ones that don't require cleanup. Okay, so use effect. So there are some hooks. So React has hooks. So if you look for React hooks, you see that they created several hooks that we can use. Some of the hooks that we can use are use effect. So let's go here. So some of the hooks are state hook, which we used before, which is use state. That's a hook. And when we say hook, it means a function that React actually created for us that we can simply just use, and it does the job for us. So we don't have to do the inner workings of that hook. There is a effect hook. Effect hook, you say use effect. This is mostly used to manage the status of the component. So let's say you want to render something, and if you like want to re-render it again, then you use effect. Let's say if there's something that's going to affect the component that's coming from outside, like API call, then you put it inside the use effect. So anything that you think it's going to manipulate or change the component or the state is best to put it in use effect. So use effect is usually used in functional component, but in a class component. So this is a functional, but in class component, you use something called component did mount. So that's also same as use effect, and we will not touch into that, but we'll just use use effect today. So that's hooks in React basically. So let's get started and basically create an app. We're gonna try to show how to use effect to call an API. And this app, we're gonna also use React Strap later on to kind of like style it a little bit, make it look better. But basically, the app is gonna call a database for movies. So that's what we're gonna do today. So let's create that. So we're gonna create a fresh React app right here. Let's clean up. And we're gonna say npm and then nbx create React app, and we're gonna call it side effect. Go side effect. Okay. So now it's gonna go ahead and create the app for us. Okay. So when it creates, then we're gonna go ahead and kind of like clear up all the things that we need to clear up, and then just get started with our app. Okay, so in here, I'm gonna cd into a side effect, and then open it with a code bin, not code bin, open it with VS Code. So right here is our app. Basically, this is basic React app. We did it several times. So let me just open a terminal here. npm start. That will start our app. Probably yes. Okay. So that's our app. Now let's just clear things up here and remove some of the stuff that we don't need. So this is usually what I do. Talked about last time. Just delete the things you don't need, so you don't get confused with all the files. Make sure to also delete them from the files they're mentioned in. So the logo, also delete it right here. It's gonna give you an error if you don't delete it. Delete that. Then also delete this. Gonna put here h2. I'll call it movies. Okay. So now also in here, we have to delete some stuff. Okay. All right, so it should look good now. That's it. I'm not sure why it didn't load automatically, but that's our app. So what are we gonna do is we're gonna set up our components. So let's do that. Our components, we need to set up a two extra components, one for movie list and another one for movie card. I think you guys have seen this. So let's go here and create a new folder, call it components, and add a movie list .js and then movie card .js. Okay, so in our app.js, we're gonna all we need to do is we need to do two things. One is we need to call that component, but first you have to create the component. So I'll use a shortcut RCF. That's the React functional component. So it will create a template for us. And here I'll create h2, say movie list. All right, movie list. The sheet, welcome. So movie list, and then in here I'm just gonna create it RCF, not CRF. No, this would be RCF. I mean, what am I talking about? Okay, and here I'm just gonna put something here, h2 movie card. We'll replace this with something else later with the list of movies and all that. So now in here we're just gonna import instead of this. I'll import the movie list component just like that. So now save. It should show. It shows an error. Okay, where's the error come from? In here, let's import React. Import React from React. Okay, so now expect. Okay. Okay, class where the object you likely export component file defined in. Okay, maybe we didn't save. Yeah, we didn't save this. That's why. Yeah, so movie list. we're not seeing movie card because we didn't import it here. So we'll do that later on. So all we do now is we're actually going to show a list of movies. We're going to use a database called, I think, let's actually just check it out. I have the link here. So let's copy that. Go here. These are the movies, basically. So this Jabili, I think that's what it's called. Jabili API. It's just going to show a list of movies. I'm not sure if it's going to show the image, but it shows a couple of movies here. And it shows the people here, description of the movie, director, release date, things like that, the title of the movie. So this is like foreign movies. I think it's Chinese movies or Japanese movies. Okay. So now we have that. We have that link. We're just gonna use, we're gonna render those movies. But before we do that, we need to import the way we're gonna render. Who remembers how do we use how do we render API? What package do we use to render APIs?
You're gonna install Axios.
Axios, yes. So we need Axios. So we say npm install Axios. So Axios is a package that allows us to fetch APIs. You could also use a fetch, which is part of JavaScript already. So it's called fetch API. So this is also similar to Axios. So you do the same thing. You call HTTP request. So it's the same thing. But I usually use Axios. All right, Axios. And then now we also need to get the logo of the page. So I'll just grab an image tag that I already created. I'm just gonna put it right here, an image tag. So this image, it has a logo here as a source, and we need to create a variable for that. So I'm just gonna go up here, gonna say let logo is equal to, I'm gonna put it an image link here. You could also just put the link here if you want. Doesn't matter. It's same thing. This one is better because usually if you build in a larger application and you put the logo in multiple places, multiple components, you could just change it one place and it will change everywhere. So this is a better practice when it comes to building an app. And this is a logo, Studio Ghibli. Okay, and we'll do the styling later, so it looks really big now. Okay, so I'm sure you guys remember we did this before. I'm gonna use the API and call it here. So let's import Axios here. Axios. Okay, so when we're trying to call something, any API, we always have to put it inside either component did mount or we have to put it inside use effect. The reason for that is use effect will help us, it will take care of the problems that come from calling an API. Some of the problems that can come from calling an API is the API might not even respond. There could be a connection problem. There could be something. So it might not even have an issue. It might bring back some of the stuff that you asked for. So it's always best to put any API call inside use effect. Otherwise, it's going to affect how your application renders, like how things are shown in the browser. So make sure you put it inside use effect. And you have to import use effect. So we're just going to do that, not like that. Effect. So it imported automatically for me here. So we're going to say use effect, and in here, before we do the use effect, actually, we need to create a state, because everything that comes from the use effect or the API, we want to put it in state, right? So we're going to say here const let's say movies, call here set movies. We might not use that set movies. So, and then use use state, I mean. So it's gonna import automatically for me. And I'm gonna leave it empty here, empty object, empty array. So I'll use the use effect here. The use effect basically takes a callback function. It takes two things. It takes a callback function and a dependency array, right? So the callback function is how use effect kind of keeps track of what's happening. So whatever is happening inside, let's say the API call and everything is taken care by the callback inside callback. So we have to give it a callback here. This callback is what keeps track of what's happening. So this callback, you put everything inside the callback, but you also need to have a dependency array. If we don't have a dependency array, and this is how dependency array looks like. So this is a dependency array, so it's empty now. You could actually put something there. If you leave it, it will create an infinite loop. So it will create it will not stop basically refreshing the component. So the component, every time you run the component, use effect runs. So the first thing that runs is basically the state, and then the use effect runs one time. And when the use effect runs, then the JSX is rendered. But if you leave it like this, it will just keep refreshing. The reason for that is the use effect is basically saying, okay, there's changes that are happening. It will think that every time it refreshes, the refreshing that it does, it will think that's a change, and then it will refresh again. So that's like a loop that just keeps continuing forever. So you don't want that. So it's best to have always a dependence array, and usually keep it empty, unless you have something in mind that that you want. Let's say there's something that changes in your state, and every time that changes, you want to re-render the component, then you could put it in here. And it has to be something specific. It has to be a number or a data or something specific. It cannot be an array or an object. It has to be a number, and a string or something like that that changes. Okay. Okay, so here let's put our Axios here. Okay, let's put our Axios. So Axios get. As usual, we're gonna put the API call here. So the API link, I'm gonna put it here. And then who remembers what we do next? What do we do?
Lock.
What is that?
Cancel lock.
Cancel lock. Okay, we'll do that. Before that, what do we do here? Do we just say?
We return.
We return it. Okay. How do we return it? So do you just say return here?
Yeah. Yep. And you open parentheses.
Okay.
Right there. You
okay. And then we put here cancel log.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm not sure.
Okay. So remember that every time we call an API, we need to know that that API call is a synchronous call, right? It's a promise that was created. So how do we consume promises? Remember that we learned promises. I was actually teaching students today about promises. In the backend, basically this API, this company, they created a promise system where every time you consume the API, you could put it inside a promise. And how do we consume the promise? We have to remember a promise in the front end has two things. It has a .then and then .catch. So .then takes care of the successful call. So if the API is successful and you receive a status that is a success, then you put it inside the .then. But if it's a failure and something happens, you put it inside the .catch. So you always have to keep that in mind. You need to have the .then and .catch. And that means when you call here, when you say get, then you send a request to this API. Then, so you just say here .then. So that means after you send the request, then do this. Basically, that's what he's trying to say. As you can see here, it's giving us a hint. This is a promise. So .then is how you consume a promise. .then actually takes a callback function. So you have to put it inside here, callback function. Usually you just say response, and then you just say you just put it like you could just put the response in parentheses. We usually keep it short, so you say res and then a callback function, and this is where you render whatever comes back from here if it's successful. If it's not successful, then you say .catch, right? And this is also a callback function, so you log the error, right? So you can say console log error, right? So we usually keep the .then in one line, in a new line, and then .catch in a new line too, like that. So always keep in mind that every time you call an API, you have to set it up like this. You have to have the .then with a callback function inside it, and then you have to have a .catch with a callback function inside it. This is every time you call an API, this is how you set it up. This res is response. You could say result, whatever. This is where everything that comes from this API, it goes in here. Now you could console log that. You could just say console log res, and we could check it out, right? Let's check it out. So let's go to here, our browser, and look at our console. As you can see, there's an object. The object has a bunch of stuff, but our data is in here. So our data is in res.data. We save that and run it again. As you can see, this is our data. This is what we're looking for. Can you guys hear me? It says my internet is unstable. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah, we lost you for a second, but you good.
Okay, that's good. So we just we make sure that we put our whatever that comes back from the API, we put it inside here, and this makes sure that we first get the request. So we first send the request. So this will not fire unless this is returned. So if nothing comes back from this, it will just go to here, the catch. So I would say just write down this somewhere so that every time you do API call, this is how you set it up. Okay, so now what do we do with this data? We want to render this data that comes back from here. We want to put it in a state right here. So who remembers, how do we put it in state? All the data I showed you here, this data, we want to move it to our state, all of it. Put it here. What do we do here?
What is the question, man? Can you explain a little bit?
So the question is, we called an API, right? So this API, it returned the data. It returned this data, this whole data. We have the data here. So the data is in res.data. So we want to send that res.data to our state. How do we do that? We want to put it in our state.
We're gonna pass through props.
Okay, so props are usually used in here, and they usually receive something from another component. So, but this one is we are inside the same component. We're inside the use effect. We just want to send we just want to push our data to here so that we could use it in our component. Who remembers? How do we manipulate the state? How do we change the state? So the state is right here. How do we change it? Remember that we have two things here. We have movies and we have set movies. What is the purpose of set movies?
To change the data we receive.
So set movies, the purpose of
we're gonna use that dot thing. What was like?
The purpose of set movies is to manipulate the state, which is this movies, right? So if we want to add something to movies, we're gonna use set movies. We're gonna use set movies, and then whatever we want to put inside here, we're gonna put it with the set movies, right? So in here, we're gonna say set movies, and then whatever we want to pass to our state here, we're gonna put it inside the set movies. So we're just gonna say press that data, right? So we're just sending the data that comes from the API. We're sending it to our state here, right? So now if you want to know, like, let's say we didn't send anything here, we just leave it like that. If we console log our state here, which is movies, so let's console log movies, save, and go back here, clear this up. There's nothing here. So it's an empty array, which is what it is. It's an empty array right here. But now let's send something to it. So let's say set movies res.data. Even before we send to res.data, let's just put something in there. Let's just say test data, right? Before we even put all the data in there, let's just put test data. Let's see if test data actually renders. You see, it shows test data here. So that's in this state, okay? So now let's put res.data in here, and that should render all our data here. So you can see 21 of them. So all the things that we needed is in this state now. So keep in mind, if you ever want to manipulate the state, you always have to use set movies or set whatever the state is. That's how you change your state, right? That's how you manipulate it. You don't directly change this. You don't ever change this. You don't ever push to this. You only use this to push any data to this. So that's why they're always together. All right, so now our data is in this state. So that's good. We want to use that to show it here and render the movies right here in underneath movie list, right? So to do that, our data is a lot of stuff. So we have to loop through it. So as you can see, our data, 21 objects. So as you can see, each object has a bunch of stuff on it. So I have to loop through it. So how do we loop through our data inside the JSX? How do we loop through it?
We're gonna say movie list.
Okay. So we say movie list dot right here.
Or maybe we can use what is it? Like destruction.
Destruction. Okay. How do we use destruction?
You're gonna go like outside of the return. You're gonna go to like right behind.
Okay. So over here or over here?
Over there, right behind. Yep, right there.
Okay. What do we do here?
You say constant.
Okay.
And then you destructed the data you received. Like you're gonna go back to the console log and see how the data was down.
Okay, so the console log, if we look at movies,
yes,
you see that this is what we receive. So we receive this, we receive multiple objects. So we receive a lot of objects. and then each object has information. So the objects don't have names. So how do we destructure them? They don't have any names.
We're gonna create like some names like this description and all that
Okay.
stuff.
So here we say const.
This. Yep.
Okay, description here.
Yes.
Description. Okay.
Like title, movie title or title.
Title.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you guys all agree?
wait, no, it's constant, and then I think you gotta put a equal in the ID number, because each movie has an ID.
Okay. So remember that we have objects with no names. So if you want to destructure something, it has to have a name, right? So we have objects here. We have 21 objects with no names. If you want to destructure these, the only way you could destructure them is by the index number, right? They have index map over, yes. So the best way is mapping over it. So destructuring, you have to have a name for you have to have a key for the object. So these ones, their key is a index number, and you don't want to destructure an index number. You could do that, but it will not make sense, because if this gets longer, then what do? You don't know how long this is. They could add more data to it. So mapping over it or using a map is the best way. So using a map, you could use inside here and just map over the data, and then you could render it like that. Right? We're actually going to send it to movie card, the data that we render, but first we have to map over it.
You're gonna open like curly braces.
Curly braces.
And say movies dot map.
Okay.
Then open function.
It needs a callback function. So, and then we're just gonna say here like something like a movie. It has to be the singular of this. So this is plural. This has to be singular. So that's how you know that you're actually grabbing one item here. Okay.
Then
all right.
Return.
Okay, return here. Return. Okay, we want to send it to this component. How do we do it? We want to send a movie to.
You're gonna put in the JavaScript parentheses.
Okay. Okay. So first we have to import this movie card, right? So we have to say movie card. So import it like this. So it automatically imports it for us. And then we pass it as what?
Prop.
As a prop. Okay. So we say here, we could say movie is equal to movie, right? Because this movie is this, and this one is just a name. We could call it whatever we want to call it, film here if we want. It doesn't matter what you call it. And close the component that you're trying to render. Okay. So now we save this. Nothing shows in our app yet. Nothing shows here, but we could use the destruction that you were saying in the movie card. So we have to put here props first, because we send things through props, and we talked about props in our last lesson. So we could console log the props here. Let's see what's in the props. Props and props here. So now, if we look at what, let's refresh this. As you can see, props, each prop brings one object. The reason I said you cannot destructure when you have to look through is because, as you can see here, this object has a name called film, right? The name is film, and you could destructure it because the name is film, and then you could grab anything you want from here, right? So that's how you destructuring needs a name, something that you can grab that applies to everything, not like something that changes like index that changes all the time. So here we do the destruction. If you guys like the destruction, some people don't like destruction. So we're gonna say here description, and these you cannot make these up. Yeah, they have to be part of the data. They have to be part of here. So this description is here. We need the director. We need the title. Or is the title original? Okay, producer, release date, maybe Obahanai. We also need the title here. Yeah. So let's do that. So title. So they have to be part of the data. You can't have just something that doesn't exist. So director and release date. I think this is how it's written. Release date. You have to go back, double check if you're not sure how it's spelled. Release date. Okay, so that's generally what we need. We don't need a lot of stuff. And here you say equal to props dot. What do we say here? Props dot. What did we send the props with? What was the name of the props here?
Movie, film.
Film.
Movie,
So
movie.
film is the
Okay.
name, movie is the data, right? So we named it film. You can name whatever you want here, but you have to call it the same thing here. So you have to props dot film. So that means we could use this and just render them here, and that'll be fine. So instead of movie card, we just gonna say here P. We're gonna say the title here. So remember that if you want to put something that's a JavaScript inside JSX, it has to have a curly bracket. This is expression. So title in here, I think the title we should put like H3 or something like that. H3, and here P, description maybe. Description. Oh, we have to put inside the curly bracket. Let's keep it at this, and then let's see if this renders to start with. So now let's remove, let me just make this smaller. Let's remove this and go to here. So you can see we have the movie name and we have the title. So this is great. So it's working for us. Okay. So remember that we did the loop in here, and this data movies, we grabbed it from the state, and the state, it got that data from this API call. And the way we send that data to the state is by using set movies, whatever you name here, sometimes film, sometimes whatever, you say set whatever it is, and then you give it the data. And that's how the state grabs the data. Then we loop over it, and then we sent this movie card component. We sent all the data one by one. So each movie, we send it one at a time. And that's how we consuming it here. So that's how we render it. Okay, any questions so far?
So you don't need to do like, since we're doing the structure, you don't need to say like props dot film dot title.
No, you don't need to do props dot title. Actually, you have to, when you're doing this, you have to do props dot film dot title. Yeah, you have to do like that. So you have to do each one of them like that. Instead of doing all this long name, you could just do destruction and do it like this, and then just grab what you need from there. All right, that's how you could do it. All right, so we did the API call. We used the use effect to make sure that we don't receive a effect. The effect that comes from the side effect that comes from API call, it's not going to affect our state or our UI, the way the component is rendering. So use effect, first it checks if the data is coming back. If it's not coming back, then it's going to give us just the error. So you could send the error after that. So now these are multiple ways of checking it. First, you use the use effect to check if the data is actually coming. Then you use the promise, which is .then, to make sure that actually that the database, the API call is working, and then you send it to the state. And the state actually also does its own checking. So it's a multiple checks before we do any rendering to the browser. So that's a good thing.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Like, what is the difference? Like, at first on movie list, you get the data through the API,
Yes.
and then you pass it the data as a prop to the movie card.
Yes.
So, like, is the data still same or is it different, like array and object? Like,
Yes. So that's a good question. So when the data is here and in this state, it's an array. So it's a big array with objects inside it, right? So it's a big chunk of data. It's not breaking down, so you don't have a single object. But when we map over it, that's when we break it down into a single object. So now whatever we send here to movie card is one object. It's not an array. So one object, and it's easy to actually access one object because all you have to do is just say, and the name, and you have the name of the object, which is film. So you just say film dot whatever inside the object, right? So it's easy to deal with one object. It's really hard to deal with a lot of objects that don't have a name and then are inside a array. There's no way to actually access that unless you map over it. Otherwise, you have to say movies, and then you have to give it an index. So you have to say movies. You have to say 20. So that's index 20, and then dot. Then you say dot. Then you say dot whatever you're looking for, like description here. But what if the data increases and you have like much more again? Now, and when you do this, when you do that, you have to do this for every array, right? So you have to say movies, and then 21, and then dot description. That's how you render them. That would be painful, and you have to do that for all of them, right? And then you have to do all of them, the titles again. That will not work, right? Especially if the data changes later on. So that's why we use map. It's because we just map over it, and it gives us each object. So it just kind of loops all of them, and then it gives us a single object, and we could deal with that single object easily. All right. Hopefully that makes sense. Any other question about how we render these movies? All right. If there's no question, we're going to move on to the styling. Let me show you the styling. We're going to use React Strap. You could use other ones. There are multiple ones. There is, I think the best one would be Material UI. Material UI is the best one. It's a little more complicated than React Strap. Not complicated, more advanced. So I would say in the future, if you're using a big project, use use Material UI. It's much more supported. But for small projects, React Strap is easier to deal with. React Strap. So React Strap is just part of a Bootstrap. So it's a Bootstrap made for React, basically. So we have to install it first, as you can see here. We have to install two things. You have to install React Strap, and then it says here we just need to install React Strap right now. We don't need to install React and React to DOM. We already have those. So let's do that. Okay. So it does that, and then the next step would be to put it somewhere. But before we do that, we need to grab Bootstrap, right? We have to import Bootstrap. So let's do that. Add in Bootstrap. So this is how you add Bootstrap. So let's install Bootstrap 2. Okay, so is that all? Okay, yeah. Bootstrap. And then we're just gonna copy this and put it in our index. Put it in our index. So index here, and then just put it right there. So this is basically making sure that we have Bootstrap. Okay. So right now everything's good, I think. So we don't need anything else. Let me double check. Everything looks good. So now let's do the styling. We want to make a card. So go to here, components, and look for a card here. So we have a card here. So we want to create a card like this. We don't need this image because we don't have an image. We just need the title, the subtitle, the description. I think we're going to put the subtitle at the bottom. So let's do that. Okay, so this is what we need. So it already gives you the code. So all you have to do is just copy this, all this stuff right here. We also need a container before we do all this. So let's find a layout. And we need a container and we need like a row. So we need a row. So let's put a container inside app.js. So let's copy this. So container will make sure that everything is kind of organized. So let's import a container. We don't need this column and row right now. So let's put everything inside a container. So actually, instead of this whole thing, we're just gonna use a container instead of that. Container. Put it at the other side. So this is styling is it's basically the way it depends on how you wanna style things. It's up to you. And then in the row, we're gonna put it inside the movie list. So the movie list, instead of this div, will have a row here. And it's from React Strap row. As you can see, it imported for us. Now, if we go back to how things look like in our app, it looks a little better, right? Everything goes to this side. The font is a little bit different, so it looks nicer. But we need to create the card for each movie. So the card, we're gonna put it in the movie card. So let's actually grab that code from the React Strap, just the card. So what we need is we need all this, not all of them, but most of them. And import it here. Now what we can do is we can just copy all this and then replace the information with what we want. So instead of this, we're just going to delete all this and replace it with the card information. So now this card information is fake. So you see that it will show fake information if we render it. So you can see here. So each one is fake information, and it shows the image here. So we need to remove all that cleanup, and we don't need a button. We don't need the button, and we don't need the image. Okay. The title here would be just the movie title. So we're just going to replace it with title. And the subtitle, we can give the subtitle the director and also the release date. So we're going to say director. So here it will be director. Sorry, let me wrap everything. So director here. And then I'm just going to say release date here. And then put the release date here. Okay, and the description will be just description here. So description, like that. So this should show every movie now. Okay, As you can see here, this is the title of the movie, director, the release date, and the description of the movie, and it put a kind of like a box for us. But the problem now is they are all in one line. We don't want that. We want to keep them in like small boxes. So let's do that. So we need to put a column in each one of them. So the column will go inside the movie card. So right before, so instead of this div, we're gonna turn it into a column. So let's call it a column here. Call, and here call. And also we need to define how the column looks like. Actually, we didn't even import. Instead of the button, bring call. As you can see, the reason why I said we need to define how the column looks like is because now it created a bunch of columns and it doesn't look good. So we need to create maybe like 3 columns here instead of all these columns. So remember that when we were doing the layout, the Flexbox, we talked about layout. So actually Bootstrap uses Flexbox. So if we say Bootstrap layout grid, the grid is divided into 12 parts. You can manipulate those 12 parts as you like. And although the Bootstrap has something called small and large or something like that, but you could actually just define it with a number. It's 12. So if you say, so this is now 2 halves. So you would just say 6 and 6, right? That would be 12. If you make this 3, how much is going to be each? Remember that total is 12. So it's going to be 12 divided by 3. How much is that?
4.
4, yeah. So it's going to be 4, 4, 4. So you could actually just name it. So that's what we're going to do in here. We're going to say column, which is going to say XS. This is part of the Reactor strap. If you want to define the width of the column, and we could just say, maybe let's try 6. So this 6 means divide into 2 halves. So let's see if that makes a difference. Okay, so it divided into 2 halves now, looks much better. As you can see, some of the description is smaller, some is bigger. There's some space, sometimes there's no space. You could make that much better. You could actually use CSS to just manipulate that and make it better. You could add colors to it, and space and all that stuff. So right now it looks good to me. Maybe I can change the logo, maybe make it a little bit less, it's too big, so let's make it a little bit smaller. The logo already has a class, so I'm just going to define that class inside this app.js, the app.css. So I'm going to define it here. I'm going to change the width of the logo. I'm going to make it 50%. I think that's enough, the width. Okay, it's much smaller now. There's so many things you could do. You could go back to Reactor strap and you could see how things are laid out sometimes. There's different types of cards, there's different ways to change the size and the layout. So as you can see, this one uses what we just did, right? So there's different ways to do things in Reactor strap, and most of this is just a Bootstrap. So if you know Bootstrap, then you could go. Any question before we close out on that?
So if you want to use like a bigger project,
Yeah.
Did you say?
I would say, yeah, I would say if it's really big, and like if it's something that you wanna put it in the internet, then it's best to use Material UI. We didn't prepare Material UI for our class, but I use Material UI for a while, so it's much easier, I think, and it also has much more flexibility when it comes to like manipulating things, and also it has a lot more templates and icons, and I think more support and things like that. But at the end of the day, it just comes down to how you use it. Like you could actually use a bigger project, you could use React Strap, and that would be fine. But you might be limited, and also you might have to write more CSS to kind of like style things the way you like. But in React, in Material UI, I think they have almost everything that you can think of pretty much. They also have like things that are already built for you. Like if you go to menu and navigations, you see that things are built. Like if you click this, see there's a navigation that's already built for you, and that's also built with React. So you can just copy the code and you'll be fine. Any question?
When we do like a build week or some project,
Yeah.
can we cheat and use the Material UI?
Yeah. You can use Material UI. So Material UI is optional. So you could just if you want to learn a little bit about it, you could do that. It's actually similar to Bootstrap. So if you already know Bootstrap, then you're not gonna get confused. But yeah, I mean, use Material, it's fine. I'm just teaching you React Strap because it's beginner friendly. It doesn't have a lot of stuff in it, and like if you go to the homepage, or if you go to here, the documentation of Material UI, which is get started right here, and if you go to here, React Strap, it's totally two different things. Like it has like a couple of things here, and this has a lot more. These are all nested stuff. So if you click one, it has a lot more stuff in there. So if you click component, it has layout. Layout has a lot more, and then inputs and navigation, services. It's just gonna overwhelm somebody who's a beginner, you know. So, but if you could use it, it's much better.
So if
Yes,
you want,
probably.
Yeah. What is that?
if you want to use this one like Material UI in React, you're gonna install the same way like you did the React Strap. You're gonna say npm install and
Yeah, the same way. But the thing about Material UI is it has a sub packages. So you install Material UI itself, which is I think this one. So you just install it like that. But then it has like a Material UI icons, which are also you have to install them. And then Material UI, like maybe navigations, Material UI layout, then you have to install those again, right? So it's going to be Material UI slash layout, Material UI slash icons. So this one is the core, but then later on when you try to use it, it will say, oh, if you want to use the icons, you don't have the icons, you have to install them. But this is just the core. I think this is just basically like the layout, like some of the layouts. But yeah, I mean, install it the same way, but make sure that whatever you're trying to get, you install them. So if you want to use the icons, then install the icons. Yeah, most people like their icons because they're really good. If you go to here, where the icons, customize style, and you could just search here, icons. Yeah, they have some of the best icons in the market. I usually just Google it. So I say Material UI icons. So as you can see here, they have a lot of icons. See, it's non-stop. Yeah. So any question? All right, we'll conclude here, inshallah. Make sure to do the assignment if you haven't done it. So this would be the NASA photo thing. Make sure that to read the instructions, you have to render a NASA photo. So NASA has something called a picture of the day. And the API is there and everything. So you have the API here. You have to generate a key for yourself, but you just have to put some information here and it will generate for you automatically. But this is the one you're going to use as astronomy picture of the day. So it's going to show a picture every day. Sometimes it might show a video, so make sure to also account for that if possible. That's I think a stretch if you want to do that. So yeah, if you haven't finished it, double check, make sure you finished it. I will let you know if you haven't finished it. So inshallah, I'll see you guys on Monday. Inshallah.
Inshallah, jazakallah khair.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.
Alaikum salam. Take care.